Welcome back. Tonight's notes are about solving quadratics by factoring. So basically, if you have a times b equals 0, then either a or b has to equal 0. Because the only way to equal 0 when you have multiplication is if one of the things you're multiplying by equals 0. So with that being said, what we're looking at is factoring. And then if two things are multiplied together, one of them has to be 0. Okay? So, as an example, this is x plus 5 squared. So remember, that's just the same as x plus 5 times x plus 5. Well, two things multiplied together equals 0. It means that one of these has to equal 0, at least one of them. Now, ultimately, look. You set them equal to 0, and you solve. Now, in this particular case, obviously, we get two of the same answer. From the beginning, I could have just square rooted both sides and solved, and I would have gotten this answer as well. So in this particular case, you only have one answer. X has to equal -5 in order for this to equal 0. All right. So let's look at the next one. Again, two things multiplied together equals 0. So one of them has to be 0. So either x equals 0 or 2x plus 5 equals 0. So set each one of them equal to 0 and then solve. So notice we have two answers. They both make it equal 0, so they are both valid answers. Many of these problems will have two answers. All right, let's look at the next example. These first two, notice we're already in factored form. Okay, they already had the multiplication going on. This, I would say it's in standard form, but it's kind of a mess. It's not equal to 0 on one side. So our first job is going to be getting it all on one side. Our second job is going to be factoring. So first of all, let's move these over. So you'll have x squared minus 5x minus 24 equals 0. Then what you're going to do is you're going to factor this. So I need to figure out what multiplies to -24 and adds up to -5. So I have -8 and +3. And I'm still sitting here thinking, if you think I'm doing those quickly, you need to study your multiplication facts. Okay? All right, so this is going to be x minus 8 and x plus 3. So set them both equal to 0, because now we're at that point where two things multiplied together equals 0. So set them both equal to 0, and you'll see what your two answers are, +8 and -3. And you might notice these written in different ways. You can have x equals, and you could put them in some curly braces, curly brackets. Some people might leave those brackets off and just list them both as x's. Anyway, they are both x values. They're both in for x. If I plug in 8, I'll get 0. If I plug in -3, I will also get 0. All right, so let's solve this last one. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plus 2 and move it over to this side. So I have 3x squared minus 5x plus 2 equals 0. Now I need to factor this, so I'm going to multiply these two together. So I want to know what multiplies to +6 but adds up to -5. So that'll be -3 and -2. So put those into the middle. And then factor by grouping. So this has a 3 and an x in common. I'm left with x minus 1. This has a negative, so I need to pull out a negative, and they both have 2, so I'll pull out a -2. I'm left with x minus 1. Alright, so I've got x minus 1, 3x minus 2 equals 0. Now set them both equal to 0 and solve. And if you can do this in your head, that's fine, as long as you get it right. Alright, so our two answers this time are going to be 1 and 2/3.